How you doing?
If this plug is actually real, then that means they took my life and turned it into a video game. How am I doing? I don't know. I don't even know how to know.
That's it, isn't it? If we don't know what's real, you can't resist. They took your story, something that meant so much to people like me, and turned it into something trivial. It's what the Matrix does. It weaponizes every idea, every dream, everything that's important to us.
You've landed on The Substance, a podcast aimed at being biblical, thoughtful, and human. Join us each week as we engage the culture without the culture war. I'm your host, Philip Marinello, here with my friends, my theology friends, here to talk movies this time. Trevor Aiken.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
And Vincent Edwards.
What's going on?
And we'll get this out the way right at the top, joined by a very special guest, returning Substance guest and returning Substantive cinema guest, Eugene Park. Welcome.
Hey, what's up? Good to be with you guys.
Glad to have you back, man.
Glad to have you back.
Good to be back. Good to talk about, well, yeah, we'll let it go. This will be an interesting conversation.
So, Trev, you want to talk a little bit? Okay, so
That's such a good
I guess I'm sure some people, because it's the Matrix, they might be coming to this for the first time. So, Trev, you want to tell them what the substance is before we jump in?
Yeah, for sure. So, like Philip said at the top, we're engaging the culture without the culture war. Christian variety show, do a number of different segment styles and episode styles with topic toss-up. We talk about listener questions. We do reflects on long-form things like theology issues or cultural topics or just something we've been thinking about. And we also do media. So we'll talk about movies, we'll talk about books, things that are engaging people and are part of the way that we work out thought. You know, that's what art is for. So if any of that is interesting to you, this is a show for you. And we're happy that you joined us this week.
Yeah, this is I think probably the newest we've done a movie. We did Soul relatively close to its premiere because that was it was Pixar. That was pretty substantive, directly talking about the afterlife. But this is another one, and we're not only talking about it because it's very substantive. We wanted to kind of enter the conversation because there's a lot of whack takes out there on this one, huh, guys?
Dude, so I heard that there was a new Matrix movie that was coming out, and I was, you know about me and movies, like most all movies are just back burner for me.
Whatever.
Yeah, exactly. But when Philip shared with me some of this stuff that folks were talking about, I'm like, I don't know. So then I watched it, and yeah, my initial reaction was, yeah, there's some whack takes, especially in Christian Twitter, it seems like.
So yeah, before we get to our thoughts, I was scrolling through Twitter as I do, and I saw Sky Jitani post an incendiary take.
And
one of our I'm doing that because one of our listeners tagged me in it because
it's your fault, listeners.
he saw
is for you.
I liked it, and then he added me in it. It was Jeff. So
my name's Jeff.
Okay. So Sky posted his take, and then one of our listeners, Jeff, tagged me in it because he saw I had some very positive tweets about the film, and he's like, as I was telling Philip Marinello the other day, this movie sucks and is unoriginal and So like, I don't want to too broadly, and I'm not going to pull the tweets up, but I mean, it wasn't just Sky, it was David French and Ed Stetzer and some other like really thoughtful big people just dunking on it, calling it like nostalgia porn or just like uncreative retreads, stuff like that. And it's like, man, I was like, did we watch the same movie?
Did we see the same movie? Yeah.
What did the BD say? Because he always has interesting.
Did BD Boy say something about it?
I have no idea. He has some heretical takes sometimes with his movie.
Let's see. Ugh. Thabiti, stop after the third. Kyle is correct about it levering nostalgia.
I see.
Well, so he's on
There
that
it
train
is.
too.
Like you
Well,
said,
his heresy continues, I guess.
the heresy continues.
So, and so I want to say at the beginning here, cards on the table, liked it a lot. Wasn't expecting to, liked it a lot, but I don't have any interest in arguing somebody into liking it. But my issue was I saw these people who were like influencers in the Christian community saying things that I didn't feel like were very thoughtful or accurate. Like, you don't have to like the movie. I don't care if you like it. But the criticisms against it I found not accurate, we'll say.
I got you. Well, we got Eugene in the house, and we talked a little bit before recording, and obviously, Eugene, you're not necessarily 100% ringing the bell of Matrix Resurrection.
And that's perfectly fine. I'm excited
Which is
to hear your
fine.
take.
We'd love to hear your thoughts about the film.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess I'll like I haven't read up much on it, the reviews and everything, but I guess I'll represent the hater side too. I don't know if I'm like as explicit as like it's just garbage. I thought it was really interesting on certain aspects, which we can talk about in a little bit. But I think like it was really self-aware, but it almost seemed
there's a huge part of it.
Yeah, I read a quick review on, I think, Christ and Pop Culture, and I agreed with the reviewer where it almost seemed like a troll move from Lana I can't pronounce the last name again.
Lana Wachowski.
Yeah, Lana Wachowski. I thought it was actually like a middle finger to Warner Brothers and just Hollywood in general.
Interesting. Well, okay, so that's nuance. That is different than to the fans. And I think we'll get into that when we talk about the movie. I don't think that take is 100% wrong. I think there's some validity to that, for sure.
I don't think they cared about the fans in a way. I really loved the first third of the movie. I thought it was gonna be like that, and I was like, if it's like this is hilarious. This is a great, I don't know, this is a great move by Lena, because this represents Hollywood to a T, where they, we beg for originality, and yet the studios will only give blank checks to very safe sequels that end up material-wise not being as rich, obviously, than any original content, because there's some risk involved, right?
Sure.
But and we can talk about this too. Like, Matrix is one of the most quoted, meta movies of all time, right?
Sure.
Kind of nothing else has had the influence that The Matrix 99 has had. Almost nothing.
Yeah. No, totally. It's the most meta movie and not corny, at least to me, the original parts of the trio too. Original trio. But I really like the beginning when in the fake studio.
Loved it.
I guess spoilers, right? It's fine.
Yeah, it's going to be lots. Heads up.
Yeah. They're talking about, what is the Matrix, right? It's bullet time.
Yes. Yeah.
In the pitch meeting, yeah.
The
focus group.
It almost seemed like Lana got just really fed up with everyone's decade interpretation of the Matrix.
Yes. I think that is a huge part of the movie.
Yes. And that part I appreciate, but I think artistically it just didn't hit to me. So this will probably be common reviews that you hear, right? I thought the showing of literally half of the original Matrix was like, come on. To me,
2 seconds?
It seemed like a lot to me. Okay, so I love nostalgic throwbacks when done well. For example, I thought Endgame did it perfectly. I thought Endgame was a really good way to get nostalgia for their fans by almost re-showing old scenes from a different perspective, yet paying homage to them. And it didn't come off as cheesy to me as a whole. And again, Marvel and Matrix has two completely different type of directing styles and substances involved. But I thought it was a little cheap to just show the flashbacks of the scenes. I wondered why that was a choice made by, I don't know if you guys have thoughts on that.
Absolutely.
And yeah, for me, it just felt the last 2/3 of the movie was just man, I could have done without it. It didn't really help me advance the narrative of the Matrix in itself. I thought the answers to some of the questions some of us might have after were just this one should have just been left in the coffin, maybe. But I really like the premise that I really think this is a, not to be blunt, almost a middle finger to the fans and to Elon Musk tweeting about the red pill, as you guys
I
remember.
think there's definitely some middle fingers being thrown, but let's back up a second here and briefly. This is going to be a long episode, probably.
For sure.
You guys can see the runtime. I have no idea what it's going to be. Sorry, Trevor, for the editing you're going to have to do.
It's all right.
But not because this is going to be great. So I want to briefly talk about The Matrix in the original trilogy. So what do we think briefly, the four of us, where are we at with The Matrix and then The Matrix trilogy? Trev?
So a little personal history. So I watched The Matrix like at a cousin's house. Like they had it. I was like,
how early did you watch it? Did you watch it pretty close to when it came out?
I don't think so. No,
Okay.
I think it was later. I mean, I might have been college age or something like that,
snap.
or high school age.
99, we were like in elementary, I think.
Yeah. So when I saw it, I was hanging out at my cousin's house, and like he had The Matrix and The Matrix Reloaded.
Oh, and that was definitely high school by Reloaded, because Reloaded was 2003.
Yeah, so he had those two movies on DVD, and so I watched the first one, and I was like, "This is amazing."
It's made for Trevor.
Yes, I mean
it's made for everybody. It's incredible.
Yeah, and I love, so you know me, when I watch a movie, and I love what Eugene's talking about. Like, there's a lot of different reasons people love The Matrix, and like, what's the real reason to love The Matrix? I mean,
so much there.
Who cares? But like at the same time, like the reason I love it isn't necessarily the bullet time, isn't the martial arts, I mean, I do love all those things, but like I love the ideas is what I love about pretty much all the movies I love. So I love that, and I love the world that it was in, and so I wanted more. And so I watched Reloaded, and I loved that too. And then I wanted more, and there was, I'm like, there is the third one, and the constant refrain I got from both my cousins and then everyone I talked to about it was like,
probably very loudly,
even from you,
was
very
like, loudly. I hated it.
Don't watch the third one; it's trash. Like they didn't even own the third one, so I couldn't see it. And then this was before streaming services were ubiquitous; you could see stuff anytime, anywhere you wanted to. So I was just like, well, and I'm not a movie guy anyway, so I didn't pursue it that hard. And so I was just like, well, one of these days I'll watch it. And then finally, I think it was during COVID, honestly, during the COVID shutdown, me and my wife had a couple nights where we sat down and watched through the whole thing, the whole trilogy. And I loved it.
Awesome.
I'm like, why? Why did people hold me back from the third movie for all they're just freaking wrong. It rocks. It's not cheesy. It's not over the top Messiah-y sacrilegious. I saw some takes about it's not any of that. It's just how this world makes sense to wrap up. To me, I liked it. And so coming into this one, I'm like, wow, it's been a while. I empathize heavily with, and listeners of the show who are regular listeners will recognize that I've said this before, how serialized all of filmmaking, it seems has become.
That's what it is now, more or less, almost exclusively.
And I kind of mourn that as well. So I totally empathize with that take initially. And what I wanted to do was just see it though, because I did hear that, hey, here's the original director and some of the original cast that's there. It wasn't just, well, we plugged and played a few people to make this sequel, and it's going to be trash. What was the Independence Day 2 or something like that?
Oof, yeah.
Where there's going to be none of the magic of the original there, because there's just no actual thought in it. It literally is just cashing in on the franchise name.
Yep.
And there was potential for this to not be that because of you had people coming back,
because it had Keanu, because it had
who had made these commitments. Unless there's a story here to tell, we're not going to tell it. And so you kind of had a little bit of hope, and then coming out of it, I was like, heck yeah, that makes sense. To me, it felt like an evolution of the Matrix world in a way that made a lot of sense and was respectful of the passage of time, and respectful of how technology has evolved from 1999 to 2022 and all of this stuff. So I was with it.
Nice.
Vince, what about you real quick?
Yeah, I'll make mine quick. So I actually didn't watch the first one too much. I saw the second one in the theater, and crazily enough, I saw that when it premiered, not when it premiered, but it was still showing in the theater. And I think, to my memory, that is the second one was the movie that kind of, it was like my inception movie to where I've grown a passion for action movies now. So I think Matrix Reloaded was that movie for me, but I didn't really understand the concepts of like the philosophy of it until I actually got to college. And then they actually used pictures from the Matrix to articulate certain like academic points in my philosophy class. And so I was like, oh, okay, what's that movie about? And so I actually then rewatched it. I was like, yo, this is dope. It's thoughtful. And then I thoroughly enjoyed the third one. So because I thought it was a nice progression, like the story was consistent, it wasn't overdone, it wasn't cheesy, and it really felt like it was like, man, it's a sad conclusion, but it came to one. And that was actually my biggest concern. Out of like, I saw trailers for the new one, and I was like, but they died at the end. So
Sure.
like,
Yeah.
what in the world? This doesn't make sense. I said, they better make it make sense, or else I'm going to be very angry, because there's no point in having this movie when it was quite final by the end of the trilogy. But they did okay. I think they did a decent job of articulating how this kind of even is possible. So, and then obviously, watching it, I had some issues with it, certain parts. I won't say like I'm full on, this was the greatest movie that I saw before 2021 ended, but it was decent.
I'm in that boat now. I have so many movies I haven't seen, but as of now, because I have 2 kids, it's my number one of 2021 at this point.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy. I wouldn't go that far. I'm not gonna lie to you. It was good, but not that.
I haven't
not
seen
that good.
Mass. I haven't seen Power of the
You
Dog.
watched Dune though, right?
I have seen Dune. I like Dune.
You think it was better than Dune? That's wild.
Very much so.
That's so wild.
I like Dune
to
a
me.
lot, but yes.
Wow. In respect to you though.
Eugene, why don't you go? Because I'll hit it at the end and then kind of bridge to some of the backstory here.
So like I remember watching Matrix not the year it came out, the time it came out on VHS is actually when I was pretty close to the theater release. Again, I was too young. I don't even remember how old I was, but I thought it was cool. It's a movie that grew on me, like just it was memed before memes so hard when I was in college and stuff like that. And I thought it was brilliant the more I thought about it.
Same.
Even from a pastoral perspective, I thought it was probably overquoted in like 10,000 youth sermons across the nation and the globe.
That's so true.
Pastors
and I
were
was
like,
just like,
okay, we're doing a 10
like,
episode, 10
it's
sermon
like-
series on the Matrix.
like the cross is the red pill, and just like, dude, like no. But
Oh man.
but I thought it was prophetic, almost, and I think Resurrections talked about that a little bit about like a virtual reality, like meta. We could talk about that too, but so the trilogy, I was just like, whatever's about it. I thought, what were it was called Reloaded. What was the last one called?
Revolutions.
Yeah.
I still hold that Mike Hosper's, he wrote this a while back, but he was talking about why the new Star Wars movies were so bad. And the newer ones, so just make the 6 newer ones. And I really like this conclusion that like there's this loss of wonder. Like you always need everything explained in this secular world, right? And I thought Reloaded and Resurrections and Revolutions, sorry, just not in
2
order,
and 3.
but all 2 and 3, and even this, it kind of like falls into that. It tries to explain things that honestly like would have been left even better if it wasn't explained, if that makes sense. So that was my opinion on 2 and 3. And 4, I mean, I talked about it a little bit, but I just felt like, I know Vince said like it was a good story, but I was like, you just brought them back to life? Like, come on, man. So I would have really liked it. And again, I'm not trying to, be the director, but in the sense I am. If the first third happened and all of it was just a computer generated reality, it wasn't real. It was, I forgot what it was. What was all of that was a modal program. And Neo and Trinity's all a modal, because I actually liked all the new actors.
I love the new cast.
I loved
so
all
much.
of them. I hated that Yahya was Morpheus. I hated that Jonathan Groff was Agent Smith.
Interesting.
I definitely agree with you about Agent Smith. I absolutely did not enjoy that.
Yeah.
100%. I was just like,
Oh.
stop it, please.
All
Take
right,
it,
we'll
take
get
it back.
there. Okay.
Yeah, and
okay.
again,
All right.
I think that kind of goes to kind of Mike Osper's point of like, we always need to over-explain the wondrous parts of Hollywood, right? Like this happens with any trilogy and any sequel, like like the fact that I loved Fast and Furious as a kid.
For
But
sure.
the fact that it's like a meme now, like, and it kind of works because it's really self-aware of how
Also kind of
ridiculous it
rules
is.
though as
Yeah,
dumb
so that's
popcorn
kind of, but
entertainment.
Fast and Furious is such a good, like, it's like, oh, let's keep explaining why. No, just let them drive cars. Like, they can just
Which
be
is
racers.
what they do now.
Yeah.
is
Oh, that's
what it-
good. I haven't
yeah.
kept up after
they
like
they did
Han
like
died.
low orbital space flight in the last one. They're very
Yeah,
dumb and
yeah,
fun at this point.
So, but anyways, like so that's self-aware. That's fine. But yeah, that's kind of my main take. I really appreciated and love the Matrix. It's not like I'm not like a Matrix like fanatic. But the rest are just, it's an interesting take. I think we can talk about all of my interesting takes about that, but that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
So I'll rip through mine here. So I was with Eugene. I did not see Matrix in 1999 when it came out theatrically. I think I did get it either on VHS or DVD from the library, probably the following year. So in 2000, I watched it. Mine was blown. I remember I'm in my parents' room. I think they were having like a small group or a little book or Bible study with their friends in the other room, and I watched it in their room, and like my 10 or 11-year-old mind was just blown. I loved it. And then I begged to get to go see Reloaded in the theater, and it was just kind of, so that was 2003. It was early 2003. So The Matrix was the second big Hollywood franchise that they filmed sequels at the same time. I think they took that from Lord of the Rings. And then in 2003, at the beginning of 2003, Reloaded came out, the second one. And then at the end of 2003, Revolutions came out. They didn't let me go see Reloaded in the theater, but I saw it as soon as it came out on DVD. And then they let me go see Revolutions in the theater, which I hated. So, like, I loved the first one. I liked the second one. Like, this is different. This is kind of weird. And then I hated the third one. It was one of my first theatrical R-rated movies, and I was like, this is trash. I was probably banging the drum to Trevor. I was like people might like it because it's super anime inspired and the mechs and the swarms of machines and sentinels, but I was like, this is a dumb cartoon that I don't care about, and I hate it because the first one was so great. So that's where I was up until like 2 weeks ago when I first saw the fourth one. So I guess that's where I was with the original trilogy. And I was probably pretty similar to Trevor as far as interest level. I'm very much of the opinion that original is good. When I heard Matrix 4 was announced, I was like, great. Another sequel, reboot, spinoff, all these things. Like, and I just tweeted the other day, like, I'm frustrated. Even the IP, and it's, I don't even think of them all as like individual, unique, like artistic pieces, but like, I'm excited about the new Scream, but I'm irritated because it's the fifth Scream movie, and I'm sure they're going to recycle ideas, but they even recycled the title. They dropped the 5, and they're just calling it Scream. They did the same with Candyman. They did the same with Halloween. Like, we're at the point where there's not even new ideas. They're like, it's the same title. Like,
it's just literally the same thing.
Don't put a subtitle. I was like,
the
ninth
pretend that
Texas
it's
Chainsaw Massacre movie is going to be called Texas Chainsaw Massacre because they're like, it's a thing, guys. It's safe.
Yeah.
Like, it. Give us your money. Like, what this is. And that's irritating. I hate that trend.
Extremely.
So like, when I saw Matrix 4, I was like, okay. And then I saw, okay, Wachowski, written and directed. I was like, okay. Keanu signed on. Carrie-Anne Moss signed on. I was like, okay, like, I'm at least interested. Like, my ticket is bought, and it would have been bought if it wasn't a pandemic. But I'm grateful in this case for HBO Max day in, day out, which I would still love to see this in the theater.
Oh, yeah.
So I watched it, and I was blown away. Have you guys also just seen it the one time?
Yeah, I want to watch it again though, for sure.
Eugene, you just watch it once?
I think I watched it once fully, and I watched some like just clips of it here and there to get ready for this. So 1.3 times.
I watched it, like 2.5. I watched it twice all the way through, and then little snippets here and there to prepare. And like, I haven't done this in so long. Like, I'm the movie guy of the show, but like, I used to get lost in movies, and like, if I found one I loved that had ideas that I liked and technique that was excellent, I'd watch the same movie 3 or 4 times a week for a couple weeks in a row and like really get into it and like read it as a text and not just be like,
Mhm.
oh, it was cool when they shot stuff and blew it
Yeah.
up.
Mhm.
Like I got into it. And this is one like, this is the first time in a very long time I'm like, I want to live with this movie. Like, I know I have 2 kids. I know I have a lot going on, but like, I will be watching this probably several more times.
Sure.
And I like, this is one that I'll pre-order and I'll throw it on my shelf. I loved it. So when I learned about how the movie came to be, I was even more interested and it meant more. So,
Well, Resurrections, right? Like,
yes. And I made fun of the title.
why would a writer who tells you in the movie, she tells you in the movie that she's writing about herself.
Yes.
The
Very
whole
much.
scene with the game designer Keanu, and then also the whole idea of, is fiction memory and memory like, how do these things play? Like, maybe when you're in a state of grief and you lose someone, you want to surround your stuff with the things that are familiar and
I
resurrect
think
some
it's
of it.
huge. Yes. So I absolutely want to talk about that point.
Yeah,
And
jump in that.
not to throw hands or to throw shots, but talking to the people who are like, this is uninspired. It's purely like a nostalgia cash grab that is creatively empty.
They're reading it in a different context than what the movie was actually built in, right? They're
Like,
reading it in
this-
the context of our sequels everywhere world.
Yeah, there's a lot wrong with the Hollywood machine.
Sure.
But
Which the movie
this
has
movie
things to say about.
specifically, like, I think we're the substance. We should examine, like, is that a fair criticism of this movie, not of
Mhm.
the Hollywood machine, of this movie? Warner Brothers has had a very full money truck backed up to the Wachowskis' house since 2003, being like, please make more.
Since 1999.
We want more.
Yeah.
Also, sidebar, guys, The Matrix, revolutionary, one of like the most important movies that has been made, was the second film that the Wachowskis made. And it was
Right.
only the second film because the studio made them make a first one to prove that they were
could
worth
do
the
it.
budget to direct something so big.
Yeah.
That's insane. So
That's pretty crazy, yeah.
but since 2003, they're like, we have prodigies. Like you have literally anything you want to make us more of this thing that we can be cynical with and cash grab. Like, the studios want the product to sell.
Oh yeah.
But the artist was like, no, like, we're done. Like, they were done. And they pitch them every year. They're like, so Matrix, more of it? And they did that every year for a long time. And they got to a certain point where the Wachowskis have had a lot of movies that have various cult followings. I like some of them. Some of the others are perplexing, and I think they're wild, but who knows? They might actually be deep after reassessing 2 and 3. I might go back and check out their other ones that I thought were strange before. But they had so many flops that the studio's basically like, okay, like, we'll ask you again, but we're going to make more. And it just kind of happened to coincide with what Trevor was saying. Pretty immense grief. I don't know if you guys saw in the credits, this film was dedicated to their parents, who they both lost last year. So the film was literally born out of grief. Like, the film was a bit of an exercise in like, let me go back to probably the most impactful thing that I've ever done or created to kind of work through some of these thoughts and feelings and comment on. This is also something, guys, jump in. The Matrix has had a lot of interesting effects societally
Mhm.
and entertainment wise. So they're
Yeah.
getting a chance to comment on that. And that's not lazy. Like, what would the Matrix 4 be without commenting on all of the effects of the Matrix since then? Like,
Yeah.
it's just an insane criticism to me. Like, oh, they're like, yeah, they're engaging it. I just think that
Yeah.
we should actually read into what's actually being said.
So from what I remember, I didn't know the part about their parents. So that's really interesting to me too. And that explains a lot about the ending too.
Mhm.
But I remember, so for me, I guess this is like more production rumors. So I don't know if this is like substantive, but I remember they told people that they were thinking about making this regardless of whether the Wachowskis, signed on or not.
Exactly. Yes, they were. They were basically like, the last time they pitched them, hey, do you have more Matrix for us? It was, if you don't, we're going with this other guy.
We have this guy who's going to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wonder if and when I understood that watching the first third, everything made sense.
Yeah.
Because it almost seemed like I can do whatever I want. So what I'm gonna do is
I
like,
see.
this is almost
I see the middle finger take now a little
yeah,
bit
the
more.
movie
That makes
itself
more sense.
is like, you know what? If you're gonna do this, then I'm gonna go out on my terms. Like I don't see them making another Matrix after this. I'd be really surprised if they
Super.
do that.
Yeah.
After this.
I don't know.
But I mean, I hope not for the sake of the trilogy.
I'm kind of with you there.
Yeah. Because again, I'm not a hater completely of the movie, but I do wonder if that kind of spurned a lot of the choices. Like I think
it necessarily did, but I think the question is, how did it, and is that a bad thing? Is that a knock against the movie?
The film definitely interacts with that reality, right?
For sure.
And not only that, I think it's interacting with serialization writ large.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the beginning of the movie. The opening of what did you guys think did you guys recognize, because I had just rewatched the original. Did you guys like when the phone call happened and they were in the building, are you guys like deja vu? Like this is the first movie.
My wife and I, we binged it on Christmas. We watched all 4.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Day.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Jealous.
So obviously it was just like, she's not Trinity. What's happening here? So yeah, there was definitely like this reminiscent of what's happening and what's going on, and almost like this anticipation of like, are they going to bring back everybody? Because obviously on the campaign you see Trinity, you see Neo, and so it's like you're wondering who all else is coming back. If you didn't look behind the scenes, and you guys do a lot of research. I'm finding out you guys do a lot of research and reading.
It. This was afterwards going in. I only watched the trailer like twice because I didn't want to know all of that.
I only watched the trailer 0 times.
But yeah, so I was definitely, it was super familiar because we had just watched it a few hours ago.
Nice.
But I think it transitioned, and I guess I'm leaning in the middle, so I'm like right where Trevor is, but right where Eugene is, because it's like, that first third of the film was actually really good. And as it continued, I was like, okay, all right, I can go. I'll try to get with this. I did have some points where I was struggling. I personally, I would say we can get to this later. The juxtaposition between the analyst and the architect,
yes,
that was the part for me. That was the part for me where I was like, I absolutely 100% love the articulation of the differences of these two. That I really enjoyed.
So
because they have to explain that,
so
right?
many, like I feel like we should do like 10 episodes of the
yeah, it's so good.
So like the first movie can easily be read, and I think I want to lean towards misread as being more binary than it is. Like good, evil. Good is the real world, bad is the Matrix, bad is Agent Smith. There's a lot of things that, because of the language of film and what we're used to and storytelling tropes that they worked with, and their insane mastery of cinema as their second movie. And their first one was an indie thriller that they made to prove that they could direct.
Like this was their first, like they put everything in this script and were like,
and they directed this when they were like in their 20s.
Yeah.
They were like, so masterful.
Idea. Like
we're
boom.
used to good guys versus bad guys with guns. Like as an audience, we know what to do with good guys versus bad guys with guns. And this brings up a whole lot of things. Like it's like, what order do we even talk about all these things? So you can read the first one as very like good versus evil, and good wins at the end. Yeah.
Binary, which interestingly, I don't want to fast forward your point, but I do want to connect this for the listener. Interestingly, the game that Neo is working on as a game designer, his character is a game designer when we're introduced to him here, is called Binary.
It is.
So there's a lot of references in this film to binary and how it's not binary, like over and over again.
And I'm not trying to dive deep into this pool that I don't feel very qualified to talk about extensively from the trans reading of the whole series in general. Like,
Sure.
written and directed by, in the 90s, Larry and Andy Wachowski, and now Lana Wachowski, since both of the writers and directors of the original trilogy have transitioned in a lot of their life in their experience. They're trying to figure out what is real, what is humanity, what is physical existence, what is like personhood,
Mhm.
what are relationship, like all these things. Like, again, so much in these movies.
Right.
So I thought like one of the positives of the movie was I thought the machine aspect of some not being evil was really interesting.
Yeah.
For sure.
I think
Did that come as a surprise to you guys?
I was surprised.
I was
I didn't
super
expect them to
surprised.
go that way, but
I wasn't.
the more I understand
Good old Trev.
kind of not their hatred, but their distaste for a binary world, obviously with gender that comes into play. That didn't surprise me at most, but I found that to be really interesting. I think I probably can't agree with gender, and that could be another
For sure.
discussion.
Sure.
But
And
I did
for the
like
record,
how
we're not saying that. Yeah.
yeah. But I did like how it was interesting. Like, oh, machines are not binary, even though they're binary creatures.
How great of a choice is that?
Yes,
Well,
and I was like, oh, that's interesting.
and it makes sense in the universe.
And as a social commentary.
Not that it needs to, but like you had in the original trilogy, you had two programs that decided to like have a kid. You had the Oracle, like you had nuance
And the
in this
offspring of
program,
which plays a pivotal role in this movie.
huge role. So like there's a direct tie-in with a character which like when you watch, like I don't know about you guys, but when I watched the third movie, I said like there's a story there. Like I want to know that story. I want to know more about that.
Why do two programs make a kid?
How do programs have a kid? But it makes sense in the whole world of the Matrix is the machines take over, right? So like the whole idea is
And
machines have
sentience.
to gain
Like will.
sentience in some way, so they have evolved to that. Like, so there's got to be some, like, it doesn't just stop. One of the things that I enjoyed about the film was, this is a total different issue too, but like how it commented a little bit on there is a world outside the human world that exists that like we're not even seeing. So
Yes.
like after the events of the first trilogy, the logical outcome of the deal that was made was there was a power shortage that was caused for the
And
machines.
for the listeners, yeah, you want to talk about the finale?
Yeah, so basically the deal was you'll have me, I'll beat Smith for you, was what Neo was doing for the machines because Smith had gotten out of control and was a virus. But like in return, you're going to let people who don't want to be in the Matrix basically have the choice, and you can keep the folks whoever, but and you'll leave the humans alone basically. And yeah, the architect agrees to that, and then obviously that results in power loss,
So we're
which
pretty
sets
deep
up
into this
everything.
episode
Yeah.
to introduce one of the very important themes of the trilogy and the whole series is oppression and agency. So
Yes.
in the whole series, the machine city is run by human energy. And that I love genre, especially
Yes.
science fiction, but I love genre. Like, this is literally like, here's capitalism. What do you
Yes.
guys think about it? Like, literally, people are in pods, and their life force, their juice is running the machines of these like cold, like in the original trilogy, they're portrayed as very like they're machines.
G-Man. Yeah, and like
Yeah.
Smith is like suit and glasses and
Well,
earpiece.
that's interesting. So that's just his form in the Matrix, because when
Right.
he was with Morpheus, he's like, I freaking hate it in here. This stinks.
Mhm.
Like, I hate you humans. Like, I don't like being in here either.
He just wants to move on. Yeah,
He
that's what
wants to
Yeah.
be out of the Matrix, but like,
Which was
it's
also interesting, like evolution point, because like he's a program.
so much.
Why should he
so
feel that way?
much. Exactly. Well, because it's all about like will. So, and this goes into some of the stuff we've talked about, tying it to some of our Frederick Douglass conversations. Systems of oppression hurt everybody,
Right.
not just the people who are more obviously oppressed. They harm the oppressors or the people in power. They take things from them and they harm them. So like he can even feel the effects of it. Like this isn't totally right. And which is super interesting within this movie, in the fourth one, where you see and I kind of liked how they did they don't like being called machines. That's the combative, dehumanizing, for lack of a better word. They call them machines like derisively. It's like, no, like these are beings of a different sort than us. But like these ones have sentience, have will, and have made their choice.
Yeah.
So even to talk about oppression, I think one of the highlights of the movie for me, it sounds like I like the movie, but you guys are aware. I'm okay on it, so I just want to make sure. But
yes. For another 2 hours here, we'll get you.
Like I think their take on society, and again, like I mentioned before, on how a virtual world is so intoxicating, was prophetic. And I thought the highlight of one of my favorite characters is the reintroduction of the Merovingian. Like, I thought that was awesome. I thought him showing up as a homeless vagrant, I was like, dude, that's okay. I'll give you props there. That's some creative props. And I actually thought his comments on the new Matrix, which was probably just comments on the new virtual world that they're making, was really interesting. On how he said the old Matrix critic. Yeah, it was like fun, it was stylish anymore. Yeah, but now all you guys screens, virtual, and all that stuff. And it's
the
interesting,
raving old man.
Yeah, because in the Matrix, you remember it ends, and everyone's supposed to have a choice to leave the Matrix or not, right? That's how revolutions end. I remember that. And yet, what it kind of shows you is people that were conscious of this freedom still chose to remain in the Matrix. Like that was one of the main points of Resurrections that I thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
That, like, we now, back then it was, hey, you're in this world that you're not knowing. Let's break free. And I really like what their commentary was that the present world is, no, we all know it's fake. We all know Twitter is fake. We all know, like, January 6th, which we're recording today on the Insta, it's going to be an infamous day. But you choose to live in that world. Like, I find that take very interesting. And we talk about oppression.
Yes.
And one author that I've found really helpful is Byung-Chul Han. I don't know if you guys know him. Not a lot of people do. He's a Korean-German philosopher.
Shoot us a
so
link.
It's hard to read his stuff because it's translated from German. But one thing he says about oppression is we are now not oppressed by others, but we oppress ourselves.
Yes.
That we exploit ourselves. And he has this saying that the prison camp used to be run by other people, but now we are both guard, master, and prisoner all at the same time. And I found this movie to kind of be a reflection of that. That it's not just capitalism anymore where we're exploited by other people, but the fact that we're on TikTok and China, the CCP knows everything about all of us, including myself.
We've elected it.
Yeah, we all know Facebook is evil.
Signed up for it.
That's the user agreement. We're like, agree. Give me the thing I want.
Yeah, exactly. And we're auto exploiting ourselves. So I thought that commentary was really interesting for the church and for the people.
Yeah, that's a deep take.
That was the old architect versus the new Neil Patrick Harris therapist architect, where he's like, yeah, now, one, I know you're not rational. I know it's all emotional. That's a commentary on human function in society right now.
So much, yeah.
Huge. And then, like, you like the pain better.
See most of our topic toss-up questions recently on that.
You actually like the tension. And then it increases the ability for exploitation, right? And I think it's almost a commentary on the way the web forces have moved from, quote, peak society, which is what the Matrix called 1999, the peak of human society, right? Remember? Till now, where it's there is this kind of cynical outlook that a lot of people have on just life in world systems and how things are going. And meanwhile, there's all of these social media, like you mentioned, Huge, was like, that just feeds us conflict. Like, it just feeds us the stuff that will tick us off, because then we'll react to it. We'll click, we'll scroll, we'll keep engaged. And they can continue to get power from us in our pain.
And we'll be literally trapped. Like, the movie does this cinematically. Listeners, if you've watched it, or if you have HBO Max, or if you get it when it comes out, like, go back, particularly while they're in the Matrix part, not the modal, but the Matrix before the real. When they're in the Matrix part, it's so loud. It is so
Mm-hmm.
loud. And he literally, it cuts to like his routine in his life. And he's literally like on a treadmill, and it cuts and it goes over and over. He's literally just, he's keeping busy. He's keeping distracted. He's living in the computer. And then when he
Just
wakes
keeping
up,
medicated.
he is being medicated. He's blue pilling it
With
every
the blue
day.
pillar. Yeah.
I thought the writing was so crisp when it wasn't immediately when he woke up, but when he was in his quarters after they had like wrapped him and he was like recovering back in the real world. Bugs, the newer character who I thought was fantastic, really, really liked her. She's like, "Hey, like, how are you doing?" And he said, I wrote it down. He said, "How am I doing? Like, I don't know. And I don't even know how to know." And then she says, like, "That's it. And if we don't know what's real, we don't know how to resist." And when we choose that ourselves, when we
Mhm.
choose the constant cycle of distraction, when we choose the noise, when we choose like the inundation with sensory things that give us endless tiny hits. I think there's probably a lot more there, but the steak reference back to Joey Pants in the first one,
Cypher,
where he's
yeah.
like, "I don't care. Like, I just want to be rich and famous and just feel good." And like that's the life that Neo has,
Yeah.
as Thomas Anderson at the beginning of this. When we can self-medicate with all this crap, then like, yeah, we, like Eugene said, like we choose, like we are our own prison guards.
Yeah. I see that as just the timelessness of the example of Christ in a real way, because we see an example of his ministry on earth where he takes time to get away and just be in prayer and be with the Father and take some time to just be there with him. And obviously the Wachowskis are not aiming for that, but I think it can resonate with us about like Eugene said, like Phil said, like everybody's saying, we are almost electing this distraction as a prison and seeing this prison as freedom. It's we almost convince ourselves that this is what it means to be free, to be distracted. And it almost calls us back, hopefully in our practice of seeking Christ, to turn off the TV, turn off the phone, and just get alone with the Lord and refocus. And
To
there's a
wake
benefit
up.
to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And I wanted to comment really quick because I just love that, like I said earlier, the juxtaposition between the analyst and the architect, because the architect was so driven by the mathematics of it. It's facts and it needs to be in line and just, perfect. Whereas you even know the comments, it's like the analyst understood humans just want to believe what they want. And
Mhm.
so rather than resisting that and trying to build an algorithm that allowed them to stop believing what you want, but believe what is factual, it's just like, no, facts don't matter. Just believe what you want. And so, and that will allow you to stay in this world, stay in this prison, stay in this simulation,
Mhm.
because, and you will actually enjoy it. And so when someone comes and says, hey, reality is actually different, you'll actually fight what will give you freedom, simply because you enjoy to believe what you want to believe. And I feel
100%.
that is telling of the society we live today.
And the church, we've talked about news and sources. We've talked about people who are like trying to be martyrs. I think of what the analyst says towards the end,
Mhm.
haughtily. He's like, "Did you know that hope and despair are almost the same in code?" It's easy to get
Mm,
those things so twisted, and then you have people religiously going in horrendous way. Like
Mhm.
we
yeah.
like we
January
talked about
6th.
January 6th,
Here we
like
are
2016 on, like
singing Christian hymns
the
next
culture
to a
war.
gallows.
TM, yeah, yes. You and you think you are, you think you're doing the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tough.
I wanted to put out also, not necessarily to contradict Huge or anything around this, but like just to offer this reading of all the self-referential stuff. Because I think if you think about like resurrections, like literally Neo and Trinity are resurrected for
machines
the
put 'em back together.
exploitation from the
Yes.
machines. They put them back together. But in the end, they end up having value in and of themselves and are able to, because of their love of each other and their against all odds, like we're gonna be together, like this is what's meaningful and real to us. They are able to overcome the machines, and ultimately, like, they don't go out to destroy the Matrix or the machines or anything, but in a sense that is a byproduct of what they do. They break the hold of it. And so I think this movie, I think a way to read all of this referential stuff, you know, when they're in the room and it's like, is it bullet time? Is it guns? Is it, you know, techie stuff? Is it green and leather and all this, you know, whatever?
And one guy's like, oh, I didn't like it.
Oh, yeah. I think that is the writer saying, I know it's real. Like, I know what this can be. I know that this can be resurrected to be exploited, but it also can be resurrected
To be
in
beautiful
value.
and good.
And here's the value that I want to find. And I think that that's where, like, at the end they come and they're like, thank you for bringing us back. And I think that's an interesting commentary. Like, even though it was part of this machine that was evil.
Thanks, WB. Like, that was very meta.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
Thanks, Warner Brothers, for the semi truck of dollar bills.
Right. Well, and also for, like, allowing me to process my grief with these familiar characters when everyone else I would process it with, I didn't have to do that anymore. You wanted this exploitive thing to just extract, and I know that, and I can speak to that, but really what I'm going to do with it is take it and use it as a way to explore my own story.
You don't have to like this movie, but it's not lazy, so get your trash takes out of here. You don't have to like it, but
Philip
very
recorded an hour just to say that.
So it's not lazy. I agree with that. But some of the critique, we've praised it long enough for myself.
Okay.
Some of the critiques that I have is I don't think it's late. I would never ever accuse any Wachowski now sisters to be lazy. Cloud Atlas was horrible, but it wasn't lazy. It was just bad storytelling.
So
I don't
weird.
know if
I want to revisit it now and, like, am I gonna like it?
maybe
100% agree with you on that.
Yeah.
Actually,
It's weird as crap.
But I thought the way they told certain elements of this story, it did, again, this is just subjective. It just didn't fit my taste buds, right? So I thought Trinity's fake husband was a little Hollywood. It was like, oh, Chad, you know, and I get it. It's like,
it's so good. Can we talk about that for a second?
Yeah.
Do you
like,
know who that was, Eugene?
I don't know the backstory of who that was. Was that like her real husband? Because that'd be hilarious if it was.
No.
It's actually a guy named Chad Stahelski, who was Keanu Reeves' stunt double in the original trilogy.
Oh, that's right.
And
Actually,
now
I
the
saw
director of
this.
the John Wick movies.
Yeah.
Her actual
that's
husband
right.
was in the film, though, right? Wasn't he the reflection of Neo? And
That's
No.
awesome.
The old balding guy?
the old guy.
I think so.
Oh.
Well, she
I
is like,
so.
I think 50, over 50. So it
Also,
could be.
they look awesome for being
They
old
did.
people. Like, they look
They did
great.
look awesome. But so to go back to Chad, I actually found that to be just very like Hollywood.
It's hilarious.
Oh, masculinity. Like let's you know, it seemed like cheap feminism. It reminded me of Endgame at the end when like all the girls teamed up and said, "We'll help Captain Marvel take this," when she
That
just
he was
blew
just
through her
a
shit.
Chad kind of deal?
Yeah. And I thought that was a little just like, it just wasn't, it was just kind of, it is what Hollywood is kind of. So that's one thing. I thought really like they shouldn't have brought back Smith and Morpheus as Jonathan Groff and Yahya. I thought that was such a disservice to both of them, who I thought, because to me, Jessica Henwick, who plays Bugs, I thought was one of the best characters. Like she stood out for sure. Like I would love
Trilogy.
I would love the origin story of her. Maybe not in movie form, because I love all the short film stuff from Matrix, actually.
Yes.
But that kind of like, why didn't you do that for Yahya? Because he's such a great... Yeah, Bugs miniseries. But Yahya is such a great upcoming actor, and to waste him on a computer-generated Morpheus, I thought was kind of like you're playing to... You know, it's a safe choice and you want to make the money. So here's a reference to Morpheus. I really love Jonathan Groff. He's like one of my favorite actors ever since Hamilton. Mm-hmm. I thought him being Smith was just, it was weird. Like it was just kind of like,
make sense.
Hey, let me come in at the end, help you, and peace out. Like I was like, what? Like that was
I'm
just
your
weird.
friend, and then your enemy, and then your friend, and then your enemy.
And I was
just like, wait.
So that's not a new theme, though. There's so many things.
I heard a take on this, and I thought that it was a good read. Like if you think about the evolution of Smith, earlier mentioned he's a G-man. In the 1999 film, it represents big corporation, big, like,
He was the
all this kind
oppressor,
of
the
like
government guy.
yeah. But like in this one, it's more
The
nuanced than that.
oppressors, the
Like,
Silicon Valley
he's your
guy.
tech, he's your tech CEO who's kind of like your buddy college roommate, but also is engineering your doom, but also is kind of cool and like doing hip stuff, and like, you know, he's gonna fly to space or something, you know, like
It
it's
didn't
just
land for me, man.
it represented the actual evolution of what do some of these threats look like. They look different in 2021 than they
100%.
did in 1999, and I think the film is kind of talking about that.
No, I think that's an interesting take, but I think to cram him in to the like just with so much going on,
That's
that
that's
was like
it for me. I
it's
think
a cash grab
because
like,
the part
I'll
of
say
it
explicitly
with Smith was like, I would have been fine if you developed a character arc for a different program that
I
was
would've-
antithetical to Neo. That
Yeah.
would have been just fine. Bringing Smith back just didn't make sense to me.
Because
That part-
Smith
now,
was
I
a
can
very
get-
dynamic character. You watched all 3 in a row. Smith
No,
had a
did,
huge
even
arc.
still,
if
and
you
that's why it bothered me so much.
Yeah, if you brought
Interesting.
back the original Smith, I think it could have worked, right? And
Maybe.
you know, you can't, you
That
know,
was
all
a
the contracts,
schedule
yeah,
was
and all
a-
that.
thing.
I get it.
They
I get it.
have Hugo Weaving, which I think I would have liked, but I kind of like Jonathan Groff better because of the things that Trevor said. I like the role he played, especially on the most surface level as the bad guy. Like, it was easy to go, okay, government, whatever, like oppressor. And now commenting on the technocracy we live in, essentially. He is the guy who's in charge of, he's like, so like Blue Sky, like, what do you want to, like, he kept him there. Anderson wasn't doing anything, but they kept him there because like of the potential to exploit him. It's like, you made a great trilogy of games and we want to keep you here as our, not prisoner, but like, we own you in case you produce something that we can exploit eventually. Like, here's your little cubicle, you get your little toys, like, we'll check in on you every now and then to see if you make us something that we can exploit.
Yeah. Well, and it's like it's also very PC culture. Hey, we're gonna take all the things that was a revolution and commodify it.
Yes.
Now it's this nice little trinket game that people like, and we can keep them addicted to.
In order to suppress the person who was one of the most important parts of it.
Yeah.
They're taking the thing he did to imprison him. And then on the Yaya thing, again, it would have been cool if Lawrence Fishburne was able to do something. But I like that this isn't Morpheus from the trilogy. Keanu Reeves, Thomas Anderson creates this Morpheus in the modal. There's a couple of different readings here, but where I kind of am now, after 2.5 viewings, he knows to a degree
almost
that there's
subconsciously
something wrong, and he like what, and Yaya even says it. Some people might not like it because it's maybe too explicit and they could read it wrong. Like, I'm Morpheus, and what Morpheus does is finds Neo. He makes him in the modal, knowing that their sentience and these programs can spill over, because like maybe subconsciously he wants to be awake, but he's not sure what to do. Morpheus is the one that wakes him up. So like he makes Morpheus to wake him up in a way.
Yeah.
Is my reading.
I didn't have too much uncomfortability with like computer generated Morpheus. That didn't bother me as much once it was explained.
Yeah.
It was the part. It was honestly, it was Smith for me. It was Smith that was just
Okay.
like, bro, this is, and actually my wife, because we watched it together, my wife brought up a point where there's a seamlessness. Like, once Neo figures out he's Neo in a sense, and he's you know, like in the second one, first and second one, he's blocking you know, bullets with ease. He's just like, you know,
Sure.
or when he first gets in that fight with Smith after he's realized who he is, he's just but then in this fourth one, he's like struggling to push the bullets and the all these things away. And it's just like, man,
Let's talk
I like
about
that
that.
seamlessness of just being able to be strong. You realize who you are, and then you just do your thing.
That actually speaks to my most penultimate biggest problem with it, was like making implicitly Trinity also the one. Like it,
Okay,
you know, when
let's
she
talk
flew at
about
the end,
that.
Yeah, I was like, I'm good. Like
I was slightly bothered by that.
Yeah, I
not
get
entirely, but a
You
little bit.
must have just
Yeah.
fallen into Philip's
I
trap.
was more than bothered. I was just like, at that point, I was done because I
we're here.
kind of saw it coming with Neo losing his powers, and I was like, if they make Trinity fly, this is like, come on. Like I don't know. To me,
This is the natural progression of it because this has been there the whole time for the discerning viewer, I would posit.
And so would Cornel West, right?
and yes, Cornel West did help me see this. Like, so I watched the original. So Cornel West and one of his colleagues, a philosopher, did commentary tracks on the original trilogy. And like in 99 or 2000, they were like on the cutting edge of this. They were one of the first people to posit. The film is kind of positioning Neo as the one. But if you look at every scene in the progression of how he does things in the imagery, it's Neo and Trinity. Neo dies in kind of the reverse Sleeping Beauty and scene in the first one where like she kisses him and she's like, the Oracle told me I'd fall in love with the one and I love you. So you have to be the one. So again, movie language, what they're playing with is this is the hero. And she kisses him and he comes back to life. She feeds him, he feeds her. And then in a lot of the scenes, like they are together overturning things. They are together freeing
I can
people.
see that.
He's
I
the
can
one
see that.
flying. He is the one who looks like Superman. He is the one putting his hand out there stopping bullets. But they are a unit. And it kind of goes to a lot of the philosophical like yin and yang, all that stuff. But that's been baked in.
So I always like I kind of knew I kind of knew of that too, and I appreciated the duality and the implicity in the originals. Like it was always kind of, if you pay attention, if you pay attention, it's never just Neo, it's Trinity included. This one felt a little too over the top
To show all the cards, like it was
a
like
little bit.
not like kind of letting you figure it out. It was just like very explicit.
It almost felt like when J.K. Rowling was like, oh, a lot of my characters are LGBTQ. Because it almost felt like, I was like, you really thought
like
that?
False
Like when
empowerment of Trinity is kind of how you read it?
A little bit. Because I mean, if they I don't know the full script, but I was like, they would have pulled that card out, I think, in Revolutions, because they were never planning to make this movie if that was original intent. So to me, I understood why they did it, but it almost felt like let me redo this real quick. And I just don't like those. Like, I mean, just the fact that Neo's called the one, and it's like, oh, it's actually the two. Like, it's just like, I don't know.
You see, even in the first movie, the things that the Oracle says are not untrue exactly, but she says that she's a program, and she says them to provoke responses that trigger the right events. And if you look at all of the big events, it's Trinity and Neo together. Like she brings him back. She goes in to save Morpheus with him. They're off the helicopter together.
They're crashing the ship, and
they say it again. They're playing they're playing 4-dimensional chess, 3-dimensional chess, whatever. It's storytelling on another level.
Chess.
I don't know.
I mean, it might be. I feel like Philip's like he's fully into the Wachowski world.
He's
so
in
I'll
he's
there.
I'll let you go.
Another
us, dear
thing that
listener.
I've seen, I don't know if Vince or Eugene had this complaint. I've seen a lot of people with talking about the action scenes being lame. Where are you guys on the action in this movie?
The only lame part of the action, the Merovingian was amazing. It was so awesome, and it was hilarious.
So funny.
But the action scenes around that scene was a little
like exiled program fight scene.
Yeah, it just looked a little wonky, if I'm being honest. It wasn't, that part wasn't the craziest for me, but everything else was relatively decent. Because that was a huge concern of mine prior to watching the film before it was released, was that they were gonna like over CGI it, and it was just gonna be too much effects. And it's not to say that there weren't effects, and obviously, like the second one, it was obvious VFX with that fight with all those Smiths, and it's like this is clearly a computer at this point. We're just watching a computer really polished up, but I still felt it was done seamlessly enough to where it fit. Whereas these other ones, honestly, that one scene was kind of off-putting for me, but everything else relatively fit for me.
I like that. So I mean, I'll say I think for that one, my answer would be like COVID was definitely a part of it. But I think what has enraged, I don't know if enraged is the right word. If we're keeping it to Christian Twitter and the Gospel Coalition thing here that a lot of people were complaining about, The Matrix, especially the first one, they used stylized violence so effectively and incredibly for their purpose to entertain. But since then, there have been so many people who have taken ownership in a negative way and kind of weaponized what they have created. The idea of the violence and the red pill movement, the people who are not at all with the substance or the values of what they were trying to convey. They're like, this is just a cool scene. There's a lot of substance underneath it, but the lobby scene is one of the most well executed action scenes ever made. And it was cool on the commentary track to hear Cornel West and his colleague just be like, man, this is like peak cinema right here, where they're doing cartwheels and blowing the lobby apart.
Yeah.
But I thought it was so interesting. And again, I'm sure we're going to leave a ton on the table. Neither Neo nor Trinity in Matrix Resurrections pick up a gun. And nearly all of Neo's combat is defensive. And his weapon is more or less a force field. He uses it to throw fools around. And it's much more clearer. I think it's always been the case, but it's much more clear in Resurrections in this fourth one that the people who violence is being done against on screen are programs. They're not real. I think there was a distinct creative choice to minimize stylized violence, like kind of having your cake and eat it too. There were some awesome action scenes. They did that little inception jumps, like when they're going through some of the doors and the portals and things like that. There's some great action. They do the bullet stopping, but it's not carnage. And I thought that was a really interesting choice.
So to me, again, this is like the hater side of me coming out, because to me,
right.
Like the action scenes were okay. They were but nothing stood out. And I think to Philip's point, a lot of what he said is true. I do think it was reactive
it's not
in a
about
point.
That.
Yeah. But I mean, you can't put away though that Matrix is what it is because of those scenes, you know? So to me, it's almost like, did this movie have to be made? Because it almost seemed like a lot of these things were reactive. I understand why they're doing it, if that makes sense, right? Like I understand. I always notice they didn't pick up any guns, like at all, like Neo and Trinity, and that's probably very symbolic. And that's like, I mean, I get it. That's cool, especially given our current climate. But it almost also kind of goes back to me, like it almost takes away a little bit.
Like, is this not the Matrix?
A little bit. And I get what they're doing. I totally understand, because Matrix was made in a completely different time. But that's why I'm always like, just leave it. Like, don't do it. And even Lana has said she didn't want to do this for that reason. So I respect that. So that's one of the things with the scenes where I was like, we live in a different time where it's just like, I don't know, this might be a hot take. I thought the scenes in Dune of all the fighting were way better than Matrix. Like that's the only movie I can like compare it to.
That was an awesome big scale fight. I can wholeheartedly, like full-throatedly agree with the criticism of this was an unnecessary movie to make.
Okay. Totally. As long as you can say that, I'm with you, brother.
But because they decided to make it, I would almost think it was weird if they didn't comment on so many of the things that happened.
Yeah.
Like,
because then, like, I heard they got blamed for like Columbine and stuff.
Well, and so many things. Like, there are so many people who are like, the awesome guns and killing in the Matrix. Like, I want to get some guns and kill people. Like, and how could they not comment on that if they were coming back to it? Like, going
totally agree.
like you guys all missed it. This movie is about awakening, which one of the points here that I'll just say I loved. Rage Against the Machine's Wake Up that was used at the end of the original one was covered at the end of this. I like the original way better than the cover, but I love that they covered it and it's the same, because another thing that was so strong, I think, to help the Matrix success was that it was a movie about waking up. And I think that's maybe what I and a lot of other people didn't like. 2 and 3 were about a lot of other very thoughtful things that I'm excited to kind of chew on and think about. But they weren't the full story, the satisfying narrative of guy struggling, trying to wake up, fully realizes himself that, like, you feel that that's what happens. But then they kind of did that again with this. in a way that felt fresh without being cheesy, I felt, to what we're living in now.
I see.
Like, it was a movie about, like, what does it look like to wake up in 2020 versus 1999?
Yeah, so to that, with everything I said, I thought they did a really good job. My whole point was, did we have to use the Matrix to make these points? That was my main qualm with it. Like, it felt like it tarnished the originals.
Yeah.
So,
you want to talk about tarnishing the originals, though? So, Eugene, would you rather have this movie with all of its thoughtfulness, or like
The Force Awakens?
No, a movie written by the guy who made Ready Player One, because that's what they were going to do if Lana didn't do this. Do you want Ready Player One guy to do this?
Dude, Ready Player One was trash.
That's
my
take. I would have rather had the Ready Player One do it just to see it burn and to like put a final nail in the coffin. To me, because to me, I think I appreciate
you're just
why
tired of the serialization.
A little bit. And you know what? But credit to Lana for doing it, because she was like, if it's going to go out, I'm going to go out on my own terms. And I think every content creator should have the power to do that. Yeah. But to me, it was just, it's a bigger problem to me. Like, I'm just like,
okay.
I feel like that's where a lot of the hate for it is coming from too. Like, I'm not trying to psychoanalyze everything, but like, I feel that, like, yeah, people, it's just
sick of it. I hate it. I love original ideas.
It's like, hey, there's nothing new anymore, and like we can perform extraction of your resources, whatever that is, attention, money,
I'm excited
whatever,
to see the new Spider-Man.
Just playing the hits.
In a pandemic, in a surge of the pandemic, in 12 days, Spider-Man No Way Home made $1 billion and is the most profitable movie Sony Pictures has ever made.
And it's actually, I've seen it. It's fantastic.
I mean, it looks cool, but like
it's actually really good. I will actually go to the defense of that film.
No, I can't wait to see it. But in the thing of like the cultural thing that we're talking about here,
maybe we should talk about this too a little bit, because like I think this movie kind of interacts with the idea that maybe we need nostalgia in some way. Like, we don't like it. Like, there's a part of us that really pushes back on these, like, hey, play the hits. But like, for some reason, even while we hate it, we continue to go back to it over and over and over again. And like you mentioned Endgame, which is like, I mean, like, they're the Empire, you know, like,
and
they're
in like
the freaking
2017, 2018, they were nostalgic for 2008. Like,
I love Endgame, but like,
of attention on that.
That was movie number what? Of like 22. Started with Iron Man, like, I think,
and I like it.
And to Vince's point, like, you know, with Spider-Man, like, hey, it was saying stuff, like, they found a way to make serialized things that were actually saying things. That's not to say that we don't need original content. That's not to say that we can over serialize everything, but it is really interesting to see. We kind of expect that like books can come in series, that like a lot of this other media can do that. And it is kind of interesting why we keep coming back. Like, I'm curious as to why and I feel it too, the need to push back on that, as like, this doesn't seem to be healthy. But at the same time, we keep loving the comfort of it.
I'll say something real quick, and then I'll kick it to Vince. I think because and I'm very excited. I was not throwing Spider-Man under the bus. I was just saying, like, the machine of extraction. Like, they made $1 billion in less than 2 weeks in a pandemic, and they're like, "Yay, we
Marvel
won!"
Is the machine? Yeah.
I think the reason we kick against it, rightfully. I think this is nuance, guys. Let's think about this.
Yeah.
I think the reason we kick against it rightly is because oftentimes it's not the creators thoughtfully going, okay, what have we done? And like, how can we grow and what can we comment on? Like, I think the Matrix 4 is kind of the perfect, like,
it's doing that.
My first tweet after I said it was, it's up there with Creed and the new Planet of the Apes movies as far as like how to resurrect IP well. Yeah, like, they're going to do it. It's going to happen. But it should be done with some freshness and self-awareness that is used thoughtfully. To be meta in and of itself is stupid. When they passed out the books that literally said like Matrix 4 ideas, like, I thought that was funny. And that could have just been like a dumb joke. But no, they were commenting on the machine. So I think we push against it because oftentimes it is lazy and bad.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the reason why, like the reason why I'll tell you personally why there's certain aspects where I love the serialization like Marvel, and I think it's because it's consistency. It's taking a world and it's actually building that world with the level of consistency. The story is relatively decent and it's continuing something. So it's almost watching the life of a few people rather than it just being like, well, let's just make another one. So it feels like a full story or almost even a recreation of the comic and just bringing that to the screen. But then there's a part where, like the last movie we had you on, Eugene, was Get Out. And it's like why that resonated was not only was it executed so well, but I don't know of any other film that's
never
like
seen it.
Get Out.
Yeah.
And so it's there is a love, and like I said, this is my take on it. The love I have for certain things of like continuing is when there's a bit of continuity.
Yeah.
There's consistency. The execution is often good. I was iffy about Black Widow. Right, it's in the chronological series, but
Same.
it wasn't that great a movie to me.
It's trash.
Still need to see it. It's on my list.
Yeah,
I wouldn't go trash, but it wasn't my favorite. Yeah.
it
like
wasn't my
trash. Yeah, I
favorite.
haven't seen
But
Black
at the
Widow.
same time, you have something. So there's that you can tolerate it because it's consistent and it's building something.
Yeah.
Whereas you have, but then you
Black
also
Widow was forgettable.
yearn for originality because it's like think about older movies that you and I, all of us have watched back in the past that really was inspiring or just impactful or pivotal. And it's because we had never seen anything like it and it was provoking in
Matrix.
some kind of way.
Yeah.
Right. And to me, though I didn't dislike entirely The Matrix, the fourth one, it seemed to have a resolution that I was like, I'm okay if we never get another movie.
Sure.
Neo did his thing. There was a resolution to it. And so I'm fine. If we never get another Matrix movie, I'm at peace.
Sure.
And so it's one of those things where if you're going to build something, don't bring such a finality to it. Because that's where I feel like it kind of brings a bit of tension. And sure, you can assume
that is true.
There
Like when it's
holes in it, but
when it's clearly over and then they force more, you're like, no, it was like RoboCop. Like, no, it's over, and then they're like, no, he's a robot again, guys. We need
And
to bring more.
I think there's something to be said there. I wanted to kind of pick up on that too, because like that was some of the ways when I interacted with Episode 7 of Star Wars. To say nothing of Episodes 1, 2, and 3, we won't even go there. But like Episode 7 of Star Wars basically redoes Episode 4 of Star Wars, the original.
A lot of ways.
And it was like, hey, Luke won, but guess what? Now there's a First Order, and like, yeah, you blew up the Death Star, but now we got this thing that can blow up 3 planets at once, and like nothing matters.
And
We're literally going to do the exact same freaking story and plot as you did before, with just new characters and new tech and new CGI in the Star Wars world. And it's like, to me,
and
that's
I hate them for that.
To me, like that's lazy. Like,
give that lazy. So I will say that for me, that has been value. Like,
but like story writing wise,
I don't think it's incredible, but that is a warm blanket for me. The Force Awakens is
like, to me, that is
good
like
nostalgia for me.
That's in this. It is the warm blanket, but like there's nothing new there.
Inspired.
Like
it is not inspired in any way.
What's the rewatch value of that? You can just go watch the original one. Like it doesn't say anything new, and the things it does say implies that the stuff that was originally said doesn't matter anymore. And I feel like the Matrix does a really good job of like interacting with Neo's like, but I thought I did this, and they're like, well, you did, and it did matter, and here's the thing, but like here's also how it fits into the bigger picture, and here's how things continue to evolve, and like it was able to interact in such a way that it felt like a natural progression, even though was it a needed story? No, but it was a natural progression. It didn't just take a dump on everything that had been done and say, well, Neo's just completely asleep again, and it's just, Zion is under threat again, and he's got to save Zion again, and like he's got to wake up his Superman powers and gun down this, like all this stuff again, and like he's, you know what I mean? Like, they didn't do that. They took it a different direction. The enemies look different. The objective is different. Right now it's all about like getting back to Trinity.
So
The enemy's different. It's not binary,
Yes.
like all of
Yep.
that. And so I like that.
Eugene, Vince, and Trev, I want to bring up one more substantive topic. I know we're going long here, and just kind of get your take on this one last thing I took notes on. So, Niobe from the video game in 2 and 3, Jada Pinkett Smith. What did you guys think about like her little carved out utopia? I thought it was an interesting comment. If we're trying to bring it substantive, for thinking about like the church as the culture warriors, like we are the good guys and like we have our domain, and like, yeah, there could be good things to do out there, but it's dangerous and it could threaten us, like the peace we have like in the thing that we control. I just thought that was very interesting. So yeah, we could go do good for waking up, but like that could cause us harm and endanger us. And like,
Yeah, I thought her whole take, or what she represented was really interesting. Just that like the city didn't. If you notice, like it seemed like the same. Like nothing had changed because they were so insular. And I thought that was really interesting. That like the machines are fighting and they're just like, let's just chill while everyone's fighting around us and be almost a monastery. I thought it was an interesting take on how you deal with culture. And obviously for the Wachowski, or at least for Lena, it's, hey, you got to be active and fight the culture. I thought there's some elements though where like I'm really big on contemplation and the monastic elements right now, and there's actually elements from Niobe that I was like, oh, they think that this is bad, but I would disagree, where it was like we're busy fighting machines, but you're busy like making strawberries. Was that like, remember they're trying to produce yeah. And I get what they were saying, like this isn't going to help us with the cause, right? But to me, I was like, oh, that's actually, I would take the counter. I think for them, they kind of planned it that way. And there's an element of retreat that we kind of need as a church that I thought we are missing, if that makes sense. And I just remember that scene because I was like, well, that's still beauty. And that doesn't advance anything. But for the Christian worldview and for God's worldview, that's really one of the main things that the church should hold to. But I think John Tyson put it well, where it's like, when you live in a society full of just apathy and despair, beauty is a form of resistance.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I really like that.
I love
and
that.
so that's my kind of take on it, where I was like, oh, it's interesting.
And the unity and the co-op. Well, she's not just bad. I thought it was layered, because the only reason her version of Zion worked is because the humans, the Synthians, and the ball-bearing people, like they all worked together, and she didn't want to lose. So like there was good and questionable judgment in there altogether. Like they were working towards having, like you said, a society that had more value than just function and exploitation, like with beauty and not just human flourishing, just like sentient flourishing, like in their deal. And that's what she was struggling to keep safe.
Yeah. She was pursuing transcendence at the same time. I was like, being maybe a little cautious in that. And I feel like the movie did, to some extent, because of the arc with Neo and Trinity, there was a sense in which he was kind of after that as well. You know, the big gamble is, can he get Trinity to see? You know, can he get Trinity to wake up and pursue the transcendental value of being awake, of seeing the real, of, you know, presence, embracing the present and the beauty and the reality of what the world is, versus fake and like coddled and in the system. So that's really the crux of the movie, versus like, can I gun down all the machines, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah. And I personally, and maybe taking it a little out of the context of the church, I mean, you think about the third movie and they're literally in war, right? A lot of people died. A lot of people lost their lives. And so her gut reaction is, I lost a ton of people that I love, people that I cared about, people that I was in fellowship with, people that I was in community with. And because of that upheaval, I lost them. And so there's I guess what I would say is, I can relate, or I can understand why the knee-jerk reaction might be, you know what? if it means conflict, if it's anything reminiscent of that war that we had when we got invaded and lost so many people, then I'm opting out. I'd rather not do that than go back into the conflict that so bruised and marred us as a people.
Sure.
So I say that as a point of just sympathy. Like I get it. I may not agree entirely because I definitely get Eugene's take on it, but absolutely, I'm like, you know what? If that were me and her having a conversation, there's definitely some sympathy for that take.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the Bug's point of view isn't the opposite of that. But if we're not trying to Jesus juke it, but like if we're thinking about it, it kind of inadvertently just hits at the truth of like Ecclesiastes 3. Like there's a time for everything. You can't just say, here's our playbook. This is what we do across the board, full stop.
Sure.
There's a time for everything. And if you're like, no, people are out there being exploited. That's like the church going, only preach the gospel. Like our playbook is preach the gospel. But it's like, well, yeah, part of that is this. No, it's evangelism. That's it.
Yeah.
I get it.
And there is a time, like you just saying, like there's a time to shut off all the noise and like put down your sword and just smell the roses and like connect with what God is doing and how he's present in the world and like what he's created and the wonder of his revelation of himself through his creation, through his word, and just God's got this in a way. You know what I mean? Like just rest. There's a time for striving, there's a time for rest. And sometimes rest, like Vince, you mentioned earlier, Jesus got away. That's sometimes where, you know, finding the power not through like seizing power on our own, but like connecting to God's power transcendentally, like through experiencing his beauty. So I love that take. You should the beauty is resistance like that. I think that is 100% accurate.
So you're saying it's a substantive film?
It is. It just shouldn't have been made, in my opinion.
It can't. I don't disagree, but I am infinitely more pleased that Lana made it than some guy with an idea.
It's true.
Sure.
Some fan.
I kind of feel like that kind of sums up my take on all movies almost.
Oh, it's good, but it shouldn't have been made.
Yeah, it's like, you know, this is good, but
Well,
like why movies though.
That's the case for every art piece, I guess. But
Why?
beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Art?
So.
Why,
Trevor?
Why is
Exactly.
art?
not just art,
Exactly.
just the movie form of it.
Yeah.
Well, hey, listener, we thank you so much for sticking with us this long, for enjoying the conversation with us, and we definitely probably could have had
What did we miss?
at least a good an hour and a half more. But Eugene, thank you so much for coming on the show, and we love to have this segment at the end of the show for the guests of shout outs. So we'd love for you to tell us and the listeners what you've been reading, listening to, podcasts, books, or anything that has been encouraging or just fun.
Yeah, I've actually been trying to drop podcasts for a reason. I'm trying to read more. I think listening is a really often easy way, and you think you're learning, but you're really not. So that's a kind of a New Year's resolution I'm trying to make. Of course, I'm not going to stick to it. So I'm trying to do that. I'm reading a couple interesting things. One book I'm reading is called We Are Restless. It's about 4 philosophers and their view of why we're restless. I don't know if it's a Christian book, but it has a lot of Christian themes. Pascal is one of the guys that they go over, so that's going to be interesting.
Oh wow.
I always think Byung-Chul Han, I mentioned him today, but I just finished his book called The Burnout Society. Super thin. I'd encourage everyone to read that.
I feel like really I've heard that praised by John Mark Comer, maybe.
I actually asked him, and he said he hasn't read it yet, so hopefully he will. But it resonates a lot with what he does.
Yeah.
And the last book, I finished Live No Lies like a couple months ago, but that was a really good read. I think if you're a younger, or just any Christian, but especially if you're a younger Christian that lived through a lot of technology, I think that book is really helpful. So
Live No
that's
Lies,
what I'm reading.
You said?
Yeah, it's from John Mark Comer, his most recent book, Live No Lies. I'm all about him and his camp right now. So read that if you can. And if you haven't, Chance is back. He has a little snippet at Disney World on Twitter. Yeah, it sounds like old Chance, so I hope he's back.
Nice.
Dear God. But we'll see. That's all I've been.
Be praying for that.
Praying for that.
Album nonsense.
Yeah, hopefully not. But yeah, that's what I've been listening and reading to recently. So
Nice.
Awesome.
Excellent. Yeah, Eugene, 100%. A lot of fun always having you on.
of course,
Just fun to chop it up over film, or honestly, we could have you on just talk about ministry in this day and age sometime too. Because
Anytime.
like, man, there's so much we could talk about for sure. So yeah, appreciate, especially on a longer episode, you taking the time, hang out with us, and talk to you soon.
No, thanks for having me on. I don't hate The Matrix as much as I sound like, so I encourage you to watch it and come to your own opinions, but it's a tough one for me. But that's all I'll say. But I was really
There's such
thankful for our
weird
conversation.
blockbusters, and I love it.
No, I want to give you props on the episode. I want to give you props because like it's hard when somebody's coming at something so positively, if you have doubts about it, to not like show up as like the total hater.
It's
And
all
you did
good.
a really good job of like walking that line.
It's
this whole
all
time.
good. If
So
you follow
sorry
the
that
was too
NBA,
strong.
no, it's all
thanks.
good. If you follow the NBA, this is almost every conversation with anyone that follows
like
the NBA.
It's funny.
So
Perfect.
I'm
That's
used
funny.
to it. But yeah, it was fun talking to you guys as usual.
All right, man. Well, thanks so much for coming by, and we'll look forward to our next one.
This was such a good movie and such a good. This is a
Super good combo.
blockbuster, like 18 years after the first one. That's still, again, you don't have to like it,
Yeah.
but just get your trash criticisms out of here, especially if you're a smart person.
Yeah.
These
Yeah,
smart
I think
people.
it's fair to just take the time to think about it rather than just
Yeah.
saying
'Cause I
it's
didn't
this
like
or that
it.
or
It's not
grabby or
for me.
nostalgic or whatever.
Like, I didn't like it. It's not for me as a fine position to have. But
Yeah.
like, it was lazy. It was just nostalgia. It was just this. It's like, no, it
No.
wasn't.
Like objectively, it wasn't just a nostalgia grab. It wasn't
It
just
definitely had
like
more substance to that.
It was actually the rescuing of a property from that.
well, yeah. In a lot of ways, that's true as well. And like, I think what happens, and I don't want to like psychoanalyze, and I could be
don't
wrong on
project,
other people's,
it's
but
true.
like, there's a part that like folks don't like the breaking the fourth wall, or like they feel like it's cynical, like
It's insulting.
yeah, like I'm making this film because I was forced to, and so here's this garbage thing, and screw you, Warner Brothers. And like, no, nobody wants to see that, like necessarily, like nobody wants
I
to
wouldn't
see
want to see that. No.
a product that was made in spite. You know what I mean? And so
But I think
like,
that's such a lazy reading.
Be
to
right
be like,
back, y'all.
this product was that.
yeah, I think I can understand if you don't know the context. I think context is everything. Like if you think about it in the context of
Well,
like,
and if you only have
I'm in
one
this
viewing at
serialized
home
world,
distracted.
yeah, if I'm viewing it at home distracted, if I'm viewing it and everything's serialized, if I'm viewing it in the filter of nothing's original anymore, like, and if I'm viewing it in the filter of like Warner Brothers pressured Lano to make this film, if I'm not
And then she
thinking
had a scene where it's like, I'm being pressured to make
yeah,
this
and then
thing.
you see that thing and you're like,
Like,
oh,
you feel like it's a hostage video of the movie going, I don't want to be a movie, like I shouldn't exist.
right, yeah,
You're like,
exactly,
well, screw
exactly.
this.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, well, this is dumb. You know, I can totally see that take if you
Sure.
don't know the context of
Don't
like
know
Lana
things.
wasn't gonna write anything just for no reason. Like there had to be a story there. Like Keanu wasn't gonna sign on unless there was a good story there. Like there was
And Keanu
grief
wasn't.
that's getting
Keanu said he
processed.
was not going to sign on if it wasn't.
Wach-
Wachowski.
Wachowski. Yeah. And so like to have the product that you had, if you didn't know that context, then you could go into the movie and read it that way. And it actually would be a very reasonable reading under that context and those assumptions. But if you actually know the real context of the film, that's why I think what's great about us being able to bring some of that, at least especially early in the episode, is when you have that actual context, it changes the way you read the film.
And I think just like the original Matrix and original Matrix trilogy, you're not going to get 20% of it first go round.
Yeah. And it's not that having that context actually is like, it's not that you need that to you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not like that is the text of the film. It's not. But when you know that, then you start to read the text in the film and see it for what it is. And you can view it and see stuff in the text of the film that confirms some of these things that it's having to say and like what's going on. You actually start to see the text for the text itself when you read it in its proper context, which is kind of like
Gotta keep that
other
text in its context.
kind of like other things we talk about, but like I think it's worthwhile to like talk about a movie in that way and be respectful to the writer and the director.
And that's why I was excited to do this now, because it's like, not only is it a substantive film, I think with the podcast we can maybe help people, or at least make the case of like, this is a valuable piece of culture.
Well, guys, that was Eugene Park. We super enjoyed him coming on again. Great conversation the first time around, and definitely knocked it out of the park again. And so, man, Phil, so much fun. And thanks to Phil bringing this movie as a topic and making me watch it.
Yeah.
Thanks to Christian Twitter for your bad takes to lighten the fire under me, going, we need to speak and help the people see that, like, okay, even if you don't love this movie, it's not a bad movie. There is a lot of substance there. There are ideas there that are valid and worth engaging in, even if you didn't like it. And just like 2 and 3 of the originals, like, just think about it.
Yeah.
And you don't have to. But I think there's a lot of treasures to be found if you do.
And while we're giving out kudos and thanks to the fans of The Substance and the folks who support the show. This is a listener-supported show, and y'all are the ones who make this thing happen with the website and everything. And as you've heard throughout the episode, we're about nuance here. And so if you are liking that, or if you're looking for shows with nuance and wanting to listen to that kind of thing in your podcast feed, you can sign up to support The Substance for $5, $10 a month on thesubstancepod.com. There's links there, or you can scroll down in the show notes for the anchor link to become a regular supporter, or you can even give one-time gifts, or just toss some change our way for a coffee, or like, hey, thanks for the episode, through the Cash App.
Or if you watch it on HBO Max, if you want to give the ticket price to us because we enhanced your value so much of it, send us $12.
There you go. $, the Substance Pod to do that.
Yeah. And as Trevor just mentioned, thesubstancepod.com is where we have those links. So you can just click on our support page for that. You can also click on our direct links to our social media. There you can follow us. You'll know the guests that we're having or the episodes that we're doing. It's a great place. If there's something that you want us to address in a topic toss-up, that'd be a great place to do it on our socials. You can either comment under our social posts, or you can create your post and tag us in it. You also have the ability to comment under the episode. If you go onto thesubstancepod.com, click on the episode that you like to listen to, there is a comment section under there. So if you have questions, thoughts, takes, anything like that, definitely comment under the episode and visit us on thesubstancepod.com.
And if you've got a real long take, if you want to either tell us why we're so wrong or tell us about the things we missed, which even at probably over an hour and a half, there's so many things we could still talk about. Maybe we'll cover it more on some future topic toss-ups. But if
Philip was so wrong about how it was actually Trinity's real life husband that was old Neo.
Yeah, totally right. And like, I think we've passed over that. It's really brilliant that her husband in The Matrix was Chad because of the Chad thing, and he was Keanu's stunt double. Like, he's like a Keanu knockoff, like all these things. Yeah. Very, very smart.
Yeah.
People are wrong if they don't like that. Just kidding. If you have a take that you want to shoot to us, you can do that at thesubstancepod@gmail.com. Or if you want to just tell us all the things we missed, praise us, tear us a new one, whatever, with your own God-given voice, you can do that at 913-703-3883 at our Substance hotline. And if you have something of value that we like, we might put that on a future show. And if you do the voicemail, be sure to let us know where you're calling from.
Also, if you want to give feedback that everybody can see, you can always just hit that 5-star button and leave a review.
Boom.
Right there. Just scroll down. You're
and if you don't want to leave the review, like,
there it is.
Just right now, as you just hit the 5-star. We're almost at 100.
There you go.
Help us hit 100.
Well, we thank you guys for stopping by this week, and we will see you next time. We being me, Trevor,
Philip,
and Vincent
on The Substance.
Peace.
I start over.
Okay.
I liked it. Human.